for his sufferings and death, while it also comforted his followers and strengthened their faith. It showed that Jesus had God's approval, and it was a foreview of his future glory and kingdom power. It presaged the presence of Christ, when his kingly authority would be complete. Transgression. See sin, I translator. See interpretation. Transportation. A means of conveyance from one place to another. Ancient modes and vehicles of transport varied with the circumstances of travelers and their destination or the places to which articles were taken. The camel's ability to subsist on the common plants of the desert and to go without water for prolonged periods made it an ideal animal for travel in arid regions. Camels served both as mounts and for transporting merchandise from place to place. GE 37. 25-28. JG 6. 3-5. 7. 12. 1 Chi 10. Two other animals employed as mounts or beasts of burden were the Asjos 15. 18. JG 5. 10. 10. 4. 12. 14. 1 Sir 25. 42. Issa 30. 6. The mule 1 Chi 1. 33, and the horse 1 Chi 4. 26. Act 23. 23, 24, 31-33. Ships were used extensively. 2 Ch 9. 21. Es 27. 9. John 1. 3. Act 20. 13-15. 27. 1-44 wagons were employed to transport both goods and persons. GE 46. 5. New 7. 1-9 chariots or litters, at times richly decorated, served as a regular means of transport for royalty or men of high station. 2 Chi 10. 15. Ca 3. 6-10. Ac 8. 26-31 and the common people usually travelled on foot. Lu 24. 13-15. O textoi acute muritra longo. Treasury 1122 severe locust plague on Egypt. Pharaoh's servants asked, how long will this man prove to be as a snare to us? X 10. 7 The previous plagues had all come at the announcement of Moses, and therefore, he had proved to be as a snare, that is, a cause of calamity or ruin to the Egyptians. So that they would not fall into the trap of idolatry, Jehovah repeatedly warned the Israelites about allowing the Canaanites to remain in the promised land. X 23. 32, 33. 34. 12. D7. 16, 25. Jos 23. 13 Idolatry was a trap, or an insidious cause of calamity, for the Israelites in that it resulted in their losing Jehovah's favor and protection and led to oppression and restraint at the hands of their enemies. It was also deceptive, was baited with the pretense of bringing benefits and pleasures. JG 2. 2, 3, 11-16. 8. 27 Similarly, King Saul used his daughter Michal in a scheme, saying, I shall give her to David that she may serve as a snare to him. 1 Sir 18. 21 Saul secretly hoped that David would lose his life in the venturesome exploit needed to obtain 100 foreskins of the Philistines to give to the king instead of marriage money. 1 Sir 18. 25. Another feature of traps alluded to in figurative terms is the speed with which they can operate, catching one unawares. The fall of Babylon to the Medes and Persians, for example, came so suddenly and unexpectedly that it was as if Jehovah had sprung a snare or trap on her. Jah 50. 24. Compare Lu 21. 34, 35. An individual must carefully examine and be cautious about what he vows or guarantees to do so that he does not find himself trapped in a situation from which escape may be difficult or virtually impossible. PR 6. 1-3. 20. 25 Companionship with a person given to fits of anger can cause one to become just like him. This is a snare, for it leads to entanglement in quarrels, ruinous complications, and sin. PR 22. 24, 25. Compare 1 Co 15. 33. On the other hand, fear of God and striving to keep his way aids the wise one to avoid being enticed into wrongdoing such as involvement with prostitutes that might become a trap leading to death. PR 13. 14. 14. 27. Compare 5. 3-8. 7. 21-23. In the 1st century CE, some Christians, attracted by the allurement of riches, fell into a snare that brought spiritual ruin. 1t6. 9, 10 others are said to have fallen into the snare of the devil. Evidently this means that they had been misled and had deviated from the truth and thus had become victims of the adversary. Timothy was urged to instruct such persons with mildness so that they might come to their senses and repent, thereby getting free from the devil's snare. 2t2. 23-26. Compare 1t1. 3, 4. 3. 9. Though it is common for schemers to try to trap an innocent person, Jehovah can reverse things and rain down upon the wicked one's traps, fire and sulfur. PS 11. 6. He can trap them, cutting off all means of escape, and then execute judgment upon them. Compare 1th5. 1-3. Treasury. A place, usually a building or a room, where money or other valuables are kept for security. Numbers 31. 54 indicates that at an early period the tent of meeting served, in a sense, as a sacred treasury holding contributed gold. The valuable things from Jericho that belonged to Jehovah were given to the treasure of Jehovah's house, suggesting that a treasury of some sort was established in connection with the tabernacle. Jos 6. 17. 24 Levites were appointed over the treasures that were contributed and over that which came as spoil made holy to God. 1ch 26. 20-28 The temple Solomon constructed also had a treasury, where gold and silver, as well as the costly utensils of the temple, were kept. 1 Chi 7. 51. 2ch 5. 1. Under the monarchy in Israel, there was in addition a royal treasury. 2 Chi 20. 13. 24. 13. 2ch 32. 27, 28. J 38. 11 Over the years the valuables of the royal treasury as well as the treasury of the house of Jehovah were otextoi acute miritra longo. Trees 1123 Jerusalem was termed the treasury. Jo 8. 20 This apparently was located in the area called the Court of the Women. According to rabbinic sources, in this temple rebuilt by Herod there were 13 treasury chests around the wall in this court. The Mishnah, Shekalim 2. 1. 6. 1. 5 These were shaped like trumpets, with small openings at the top, and the people would deposit in them various contributions and offerings. Mr. 12. 41 The priests refused to put into this sacred treasury the silver pieces Judas threw into the temple, because, they said, they are the price of blood. Mount 27. 6 It is believed that this temple also contained a major treasury, where the money from the treasury chests was brought. Trees Heb. Etz. Gr. Dendron. The great variation in the climate of Palestine and neighboring lands made possible a very diversified growth of trees, from the cedars of Lebanon to the date palms of Jericho and the broom trees of the desert. Some 30 different types of trees are mentioned in the Bible, and these are considered in this publication under the particular name of the tree. The problem of identifying the particular tree indicated by the original Hebrew or Greek word is frequently a difficult one, and in a number of cases, the identification is only tentative. Such identification depends upon the extent of description given in the actual Bible record as to the characteristics of the tree at times indicated by the meaning of the root word from which the name is derived and by comparison of such description with the trees now known to grow in Bible lands, particularly in the regions indicated in the Bible text, when these are so mentioned. Additional help comes from a study of cognate words, that is, words that by their form give evidence of being related and having proceeded from the same original root or source in other languages, such as Arabic and Aramaic. In some cases it seems the wiser course simply to transliterate the name, as, for example, in the case of the algum tree. as Harold and Molden point out in their book Plants of the Bible 1952, pages 5, 6. Many of the trees now found in Palestine may not have been growing there in Bible times, since, as they state, floras change, especially in regions like Palestine and Egypt where man, notorious for his aptitude in upsetting the delicately adjusted balances in nature, has been most active for thousands of years. They further state, many plants which grew in abundance in the Holy Land or surrounding countries in biblical days are now no longer found there, or else grow in far smaller numbers. Some types have been exterminated or greatly diminished by excessive cultivation of the land or by devastation of timberlands due to the invading forces of Assyria, Babylon, on down to Rome. Just 6. Lu 19. 43. The destruction of trees and forests has allowed the topsoil to wash away and has resulted in barrenness and desolation in many areas. As early as in Abraham's day, trees were listed in a contract for the transfer of property. GE 23. 15-18. In the law. Later Jehovah God brought Israel into Canaan, a land containing trees for food in abundance. He promised to provide the needed rain if Israel obeyed him, and he required that 1/10 of the fruits be set aside for the use of the sanctuary and the priesthood. NE 9. 25. La 26. 3, 4. 27. 30. On invading the land, the Israelites were instructed not to destroy the fruit-bearing trees when attacking the cities, although centuries later the kings of Judah and Israel were authorized by God to devastate the good trees of the kingdom of Moab. The reason appears to be that Moab was outside the promised land. It was punitive warfare against Moab, and the Israelite action was a protection against Moabite revolt or retaliation. The 20. 19, 20. 2 Kai 3. 19, 25. Compare J 6. On planting a tree, the owner was not to eat of its fruit during the first 3 years. O textoi acute miritra longo. Trespass 11:24. Determine or set the standards for man as to what is good approved by God and what is bad condemned by God. It thus constituted a test of man's respect for his Creator's position and his willingness to remain within the area of freedom decreed by God, an area that was by no means crammed and that allowed for the greatest enjoyment of human life. Therefore, to violate the boundaries of the prohibited area by eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and bad would be an invasion of or a revolt against God's domain and authority. See sovereignty. Trees were also used to symbolize individuals, rulers, and kingdoms, as in the prophecy likening the fall of Pharaoh and his crowd to the cutting down of a lofty cedar as 31, as well as in Daniel's prophecy regarding the mighty tree representing dominion in the kingdom of mankind. Darfur. 10-26. The righteous man is likened to a tree planted by streams of water. PS 1. 3, whose foliage is luxuriant and whose fruit continues to grow even in drought. Just 17. 8. The promise that the days of God's restored people will be like those of a tree. Isa 65. 22 is made more meaningful by the fact that some trees of Palestine live for centuries, even up to 1,000 years or more. In Ezekiel's vision, a stream flowing from the visionary temple was lined with fruitful trees of healing foliage, and a similar vision is presented in the book of Revelation. S 47. 7, 12. Re 22. 2, 14. The expression tree of life is used with regard to true wisdom, the fruitage of the righteous, the realization of a thing desired, and calmness of the tongue. It is also associated with the crown of life. PR 3. 18. 11. 30. 13. 12. 15. 4. Re 2. 7, 10. Trees are mentioned in association with the fruitful, peaceful, and joyful conditions resulting from Jehovah's kingship and the restoration of his people. 1 Ch 16. 33. PS 96. 12. 148. 9. Isla 55. 12. S 34. 27. 36. 30. Jesus used trees in some of his illustrations, stressing the need for fruitfulness in true righteousness, as John the Baptist had done before him. Mount 3. 10. 7. 15-20 Since fruit trees were taxed in Palestine in that time, an unproductive tree as good as dead was an undesirable burden to the owner and, hence, a tree to be chopped down and destroyed. Lu 13. 6-9 At Jew 12, immoral persons who infiltrate the Christian congregation are likened to fruitless trees in autumn time that have died twice. Their being described as twice dead may be an emphatic way of expressing that they are completely dead. Or, it could signify that they are dead from two viewpoints. They are one barren or fruitless and two literally dead, possessing no vitality. The Hebrew word for tree is also used with regard to the stake or post on which a body was hung. GE 40. 19. De 21. 22, 23. Jos 8. 29. As 2. 23 In applying Deuteronomy 21. 23, the Apostle Paul used the Greek word elon wood. 3. 13. See torture stake. Individual trees by name. Trespass. See sin, trial. See legal case. Tribe. A group of people, comprising a number of families or clans, who are united by race or custom under the same leaders. The Hebrew words often rendered tribe matter and shevet both mean rod or staff. X 7. 12. PR 13. 24 Apparently these words came to signify tribe in the sense of a group of persons led by a chief or chieftains carrying a scepter or staff. Compare New 17. 2-6. In most cases where the context shows that either word has the thought of tribe, it is used in regard to one of the tribes of Israel, such as the tribe Matmiddle of Gad or the tribe Shevet of Moavites. Jos 13. 24, 33 However, the tribe that God redeemed as his inheritance, mentioned at Psalm 74. 2, evidently refers to the entire nation of Israel, speaking of it as a tribe or people distinct from other nations and peoples. And the term tribe at Numbers 4. 18 seems to be used in a more restrictive sense. O textoi acute miritra longo, Tribulation 11:25 also says every eye will see him. Compare Mount 24. 30. Tribes of Israel. The tribal arrangement in Israel was based on descent from the 12 sons of Jacob. GE 29. 32. 30. 24. 35. 16-18 These 12 family heads gr. Duda middle. Tri middle. Uckers produced the 12 tribes of Israel. GE 49. 1-28. Acts 7. 8 However, Jacob blessed Joseph's two sons, Manasseh the older and Ephraim the younger, and said, Ephraim and Manasseh will become mine like his actual sons Reuben and Simeon. GE 48. 5, 13-20 When the various tribes received their land inheritance in the promised land Jos 13-19, there was no tribe of Joseph. Instead, the sons of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim, were counted as distinct tribes in Israel. See Boundary. Map, Volume 1, p. 744. As Jehovah had arranged, though, this did not increase the tribes of Israel receiving an inheritance to 13, because the Levites got no land inheritance. Jehovah had chosen the tribe of Levi new 1. 49 in place of the firstborn of the other tribes to minister at the sanctuary. X 13. 1, 2. New 3. 6-13, 41. A 10. 8, 9. 18. 1. See Levites. Consequently, there were 12 non-Levite tribes in Israel. Jos 3. 12, 13. JG 19. 29. 1K 11. 30-32. Act 26. 7. When Moses blessed the tribes to 33. 6-24, Simeon was not mentioned by name, perhaps because the tribe was greatly reduced in size and its land portion was to be enclosed in the territory of Judah. In Ezekiel's vision of the whole contribution and the 12 tribes, the tribes listed are the same as those who received the land inheritances given in the book of Joshua. S 48. 1-8, 23-28 The tribe of Levi was located within the holy contribution in Ezekiel's vision. S 48. 914, 22. Tribal structure. Much of the organization of the Israelites revolved around their tribal structure. Both their order of marching and encampment in the wilderness were according to tribes. New 2. 1-31. 10. 5, 6, 13-28 The land inheritance was apportioned on the basis of tribes, and special laws were given so that the land would not circulate from tribe to tribe. New 36. 7-9. Jos 19. 51. The dividing up of the nation according to family heads was further carried out within each tribe. Though the tribe was the basic and most important division of the nation, each tribe was subdivided into large families with family used in a broad sense based on descent from paternal heads. New 3. 20, 24. 34. 14 Within each family there were many individual households. This arrangement, patterned after the tribal structure, is well illustrated in Joshua 7. 16-18 and 1 Samuel 9. 21. 10. 20, 21. Tribes of spiritual Israel. Revelation 7. 4-8 divides the 144,000 members of spiritual Israel into 12 tribes of 12,000 each. See Israel of God. The list differs slightly from the lists of Jacob's sons including Levi, who were the tribal heads of natural Israel. G 49. 28 The following may be the reason for the difference. Jacob's firstborn son Reuben lost his right as firstborn by his misconduct. G 49. 3, 4. 1 ch 5. 1, 2 Joseph the firstborn son of Jacob through his second, but favorite, wife Rachel gained the privileges of firstborn son, including the right to have two parts, or portions, in Israel. G 48. 21, 22 In the Revelation list Joseph evidently stands for Ephraim, and Manasseh represents Joseph's second portion in spiritual Israel. The tribe of Levi is listed. To make room for Levi without increasing the number of tribes, no tribe of Dan is included in Revelation 7. 4-8, but apparently not because of any unsuitability on Dan's part. The inclusion of Levi would also serve to show that there is no special priestly tribe in spiritual Israel, the entire spiritual nation being a royal priesthood. 1 Pe 2. 9. Judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Jesus told the apostles that in the recreation there would sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Mount 19. 28. See Creation Recreation O Textoi Acute Miritra Longo, Tribulation 11:26 to Orphans and Widows Jas 1. 27, Famine Act 7. 11, and Punishment for Wrongdoing Row 2. 9. Re 2. 22. The tribulation mentioned at 2 Corinthians 2. 4 apparently refers to the distress felt by the Apostle Paul because of the wrong conduct of the Christians at Corinth and because he had to correct them with severity. Marriage brings tribulation in the flesh. When recommending singleness as the better course, the Apostle Paul observed, "But even if you did marry, you would commit no sin. However, those who do will have tribulation in their flesh." 1 Cor 7. 28 Marriage is attended by certain anxieties and cares for husband, wife, and children. 1 Cor 7. 32-35 Sickness can bring burdens and stresses on the family. For Christians, persecution may arise. Families may even be driven from their homes. Fathers may find it hard to provide life's necessities for their households. Parents or children may be separated by imprisonment, suffer torture at the hands of persecutors, or even lose their lives. Faithfulness under tribulation. Tribulation in the form of persecution can have a weakening effect upon the faith of an individual. Christ Jesus, in his illustration of the sower, indicated that certain persons would actually be stumbled on account of tribulation or persecution. Mount 13. 21. Mr. 4. 17 Being aware of this danger, the Apostle Paul was very much concerned about the newly formed congregation at Thessalonica. those associated with that congregation had embraced Christianity under much tribulation. 1th 6. Compare Acts 17. 5-10 and continued to experience such. The apostle therefore sent Timothy to strengthen and comfort them, that no one might be swayed by these tribulations. 1th 3. 1-3, 5 When Timothy brought back news that the Thessalonians had remained firm in the faith, Paul was greatly comforted. 1th 3. 6, 7 Doubtless the apostles' efforts in preparing them to expect tribulation also helped the Thessalonians to continue to be faithful servants of God. 1th 3. 4. Compare Job 16. 33. Acts 14. 22. Although tribulation is unpleasant, the Christian can exult while enduring it, since he knows that faithfulness is approved by God and will ultimately lead to the realization of his grand hope. Row 5. 3-5. 12. 12 The tribulation itself is but momentary and light in comparison with the everlasting glory to be received for remaining faithful. 2 Co 4. 17, 18 The Christian can also rest assured that God's loyal love will never waver, whatever tribulation may come upon the faithful believer. Row 8. 35-39. In writing to the Corinthians, the Apostle Paul pointed to yet other factors that would help the Christian to endure tribulation. He stated, "Blessed be the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those in any sort of tribulation through the comfort with which we ourselves are being comforted by God." Now whether we are in tribulation, it is for your comfort and salvation. Or whether we are being comforted, it is for your comfort that operates to make you endure the same sufferings that we also suffer. 2 Co 1. 3-6 The precious promises of God, the help of His Holy Spirit, and His answering the prayers of those experiencing tribulation are a source of comfort to Christians. On the basis of their own experience, they can encourage and comfort still others. Their example of faithfulness and expressions of conviction inspire fellow Christians likewise to remain faithful. Paul himself appreciated the comfort given to him by fellow believers as he endured tribulations. He commended the Philippian Christians for this. "You acted well in becoming sharers with me in my tribulation." php 4. 14 Being genuinely interested in Paul, who was imprisoned at Rome, they helped him to bear his tribulation by assisting him materially. php 4. 15-20. There are times, however, when certain persons become fearful on account of textual acute miritra longo, Tribunal 1127 The system of things. Jesus mentioned a great tribulation such as has not occurred since the world's beginning until now, no, nor will occur again. Mount 24. 3:21 as a comparison of Matthew 24. 15-22 with Luke 21. 20-24 reveals, this had initial reference to a tribulation to come upon Jerusalem. The fulfillment came in 70 CE, when the city was besieged by the Roman armies under General Titus. This resulted in severe famine conditions and much loss of life. The Jewish historian Josephus relates that 1,100,000 Jews died or were killed, whereas 97,000 survived and were taken into captivity. The temple was completely destroyed. Contrary to the wish of the Roman commander Titus, Roman soldiers set the temple itself on fire. According to Josephus, this took place in the same month and on the same day that the Babylonians had burned the former temple on this site. The Jewish War, 6, 249-274, 5-8, 429, 3. 2 Chi 25. 8, 9 The temple destroyed by the Romans has never been rebuilt. Such a great tribulation has not occurred again or been repeated upon Jerusalem. Nevertheless, biblical evidence indicates that the tribulation upon Jerusalem in 70 CE pointed forward to a far greater tribulation, one affecting all nations. Jesus continued his prophecy by describing events that would occur during the centuries after Jerusalem's destruction. Mount 24. 23-28. Mr. 13. 21-23 Then, at Matthew 24. 29, he added that immediately after the tribulation of those days, there would be fear-inspiring celestial phenomena. Mark 13. 24, 25 says that these phenomena would take place in those days, after that tribulation. See also Luke 21. 25, 26. To what tribulation did Jesus there refer? Some Bible commentators have reasoned that it was the tribulation that came upon Jerusalem in 70 CE, though they also realized that the events described thereafter evidently would take place at a time that, from a human standpoint, was then distant. They reasoned that the expression immediately after conveyed God's perspective of the time involved, or that the certainty of what was to occur was being expressed by language that placed the events immediately before the reader. However, since the prophecy at Matthew 24, 4-22 also Mystic 13, 5-20 and Luke 21, 8-24a clearly has a dual fulfillment, might the tribulation referred to at Matthew 24, 29 and Mark 13, 24 be the tribulation during the second and final fulfillment of what was foretold at Matthew 24, 21 and Mark 13, 19. Viewed in the light of the Bible as a whole, this seems most likely. Do the terms used in the Greek text allow for such a view? Definitely. When Matthew 24, 29 refers to those days and when Mark 13, 24 mentions those days and that tribulation, the Greek grammar does allow for such an understanding. It seems that Jesus' prophecy is saying that after the outbreak of the coming global tribulation, there will be striking phenomena as represented by sun and moon being darkened, stars falling, and powers of heaven being shaken, as well as fulfillment of the sign of the Son of Man. About 3 decades after Jerusalem's destruction, the Apostle John, with reference to great crowd of persons from all nations, tribes, and peoples, was told, "These are the ones that come out of the great tribulation." Re 7. 13, 14 The fact that a great crowd comes out of the great tribulation shows that they survive it. This is confirmed by a similar expression at Acts 7. 9, 10. God was with Joseph, and he delivered him out of all his tribulations. Joseph's being delivered out of all his tribulations meant not only that he was enabled to endure them, but also that he survived the afflictions he experienced. It is noteworthy that the Apostle Paul referred to the execution of God's judgment upon the ungodly as tribulation. He wrote, "This takes into account that it is righteous on God's part to repay tribulation to those who make text to acute miritra longo." Tribute 11:28 Paul acknowledged that men such as Apollos, Cephas, and himself in a sense belonged to or were servants of the Corinthian congregation. 1 Co 3. 21, 22 Yet some in that congregation were criticizing and judging Paul, which attitude grew out of their sectarianism, their fleshliness rather than spirituality, their looking to men instead of to Christ. 1 Co 9. 1-4 Paul ably defended his ministry. 1 Co 9. 5-27, setting forth the general rule or view that a Christian should not be primarily concerned about the judgment of men, whether by the Corinthians or by some human court on a set day. Rather, Paul was concerned about the future day of judgment or evaluation by God through Jesus. He was the one who had given Paul the stewardship to which he must prove faithful. 1 Co 1. 8. 4. 2-5. Heb 4. 13. Tribute. Generally, money or other valuable consideration, such as livestock, paid by a state or a ruler to a foreign power in acknowledgement of submission, to maintain peace, or to gain protection. For a consideration of the original language words, see taxation. Nations exacting tribute from other peoples frequently received gold and silver or products that were in short supply in their own land. In this way they strengthened their economic position while keeping the subjugated nations weak by drawing heavily on their resources. Judean Kings David 2:8. 2, 6, Solomon PS 72. 10. Compare 1 Kai 4. 21. 10. 23-25, Jehoshaphat 2ch 17. 10, 11, and Uzziah 2ch 26. 8, as well as Israelite King Ahab 2 Kai 3. 4, 5, received tribute from other peoples. However, on account of unfaithfulness, the Israelites were often in an inferior position and were forced to pay tribute to others. As early as the time of the Judges, while under the domination of Moabite King Eglon, they paid tribute. JG 3. 12-17 In later years, both the Kingdom of Judah and the northern Kingdom of Israel paid tribute upon coming under the control of foreign powers. 2 Kai 17. 3. 23. 35 At various times they paid what amounted to a form of tribute when buying off enemy nations or bribing others for military assistance. 2 Kai 12. 18. 15. 19, 20. 18. 13-16. Triumphal procession. A formal procession in celebration of victory over an enemy. The Greek word bo, meaning lead in a triumphal procession, occurs only twice in the scriptures, each time in a somewhat different illustrative setting. 2 Co 2. 14. Col 2. 15. Triumphal processions among the nations. Egypt, Assyria, and other nations commemorated their military victories with triumphal processions. In the days of the Roman Republic, one of the highest honors the Senate could bestow on a conquering general was to allow him to celebrate his victory with a formal and costly procession of triumph in which no detail of pomp and glory was overlooked. The Roman procession moved slowly along via Triumphalis and up the winding ascent to the Temple of Jupiter atop the Capitoline Hill. Musicians playing and singing songs of victory were at the front, followed by young men leading the sacrificial cattle. Then came open carts loaded with booty, and tremendous floats illustrating battle scenes or the destruction of cities and temples, and perhaps topped with a figure of the vanquished commander. The captive kings, princes, and generals taken in the war, with their children and attendants, were led along in chains, often stripped naked, to their humiliation and shame. Next came the general's chariot, decorated in ivory and gold, wreathed with laurel, and drawn by 4 white horses or, on occasion, by elephants, lions, tigers, or deer. The conqueror's children sat at his feet or rode in a separate chariot behind him. Roman consuls and magistrates followed on foot, then lieutenants and military tribunes with the victorious army. All bedecked with garlands of laurel and gifts, and singing songs of praise to their leader. In the vanguard were the priests and their attendants. O textoi acute miritra longo. Tros 1129 of the archers may have represented the yoke of submission under which captives were forced to march. Christians share in triumphal procession. It was from such examples and general knowledge of the times that Paul drew his metaphor when writing to the Corinthians. Thanks be to God who always leads us in a triumphal procession in company with the Christ. 2 Co 2. 14-16 The picture presents Paul and fellow Christians as devoted subjects of God, in company with the Christ, as sons, ranking officers, and victorious soldiers, all following in God's train and being led by him in a grand triumphal procession along a perfumed route. At Colossians 2. 15, the situation is quite different. Here the enemy governments and authorities under Satan are described as the captives and prisoners in the triumphal procession. These Jehovah the Conqueror strips naked and exhibits in open public as defeated ones, the ones conquered by means of it, that is, by means of the torture stake mentioned in the previous verse. Christ's death on the torture stake not only provided the basis for removing the handwritten document, the law covenant, but also made it possible for Christians to be freed from bondage to the satanic powers of darkness. Other processions. The Bible also refers to other processions, occasions when throngs moved along together in celebration of outstanding events. David described Jehovah's victorious procession from Sinai to the Holy Temple site in Jerusalem. War chariots of God, captives, singers and musicians, and congregated throngs blessing the Holy One of Israel. PS 68. 17, 18, 24-26 A procession was included in the inaugural celebration at the time of completion of the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls in the days of Nehemiah. NE 12. 31 And a festival procession is referred to in Psalm 118. 27, evidently in connection with the annual festival of booths. Troas. The principal seaport of NW Asia Minor from which Paul departed on his first visit to Macedonia, and to which he later returned on occasion. It was located about 30 kilometers 90 miles of the Hellespont Dardanelles and about 25 kilometers 15 miles of the traditional site of ancient Troy. The same Greek term rendered Troas also applied to the Shroud, a region in Mysia that surrounded Troy. The city of Troas was first built during the latter part of the 4th century BCE by Antigonus, one of the generals of Alexander the Great. In 133 BCE it came under Roman control, and thereafter the region of Mysia became part of the Roman province of Asia. Julius Caesar for a time considered transferring the seat of the Roman government to Troas. Emperor Augustus further favored the city by making it a colonia, independent of the provincial governor of Asia, and by exempting its citizens from both land and poll taxes. On Paul's second journey, probably in the spring of 50 CE, and after passing through Phrygia and Galatia, the apostle and his companions came to Troas, for the Spirit of Jesus did not permit them to go into Bithynia. Acts 16. 6-8 Here in Troas, Paul had an unusual vision, one of a man calling to him, "Step over into Macedonia and help us." Immediately it was concluded, God had summoned us to declare the good news to them. The occurrence of us in this text and we in the following verses must mean that, here in Troas, Luke first joined Paul's party and made the voyage with them across the Aegean to Neapolis. Acts 16. 9-12 After leaving Ephesus on his third journey, Paul stopped in Troas and there preached the good news about the Christ, for as he says, "A door was opened to me in the Lord." But after an undisclosed period of time, the apostle became concerned that Titus had not arrived, and so he departed for Macedonia, hoping to find him there. Act 20. 1. 2 Co 2. 12, 13. Evidently Paul spent that winter in Greece before returning again to Troas in the spring of 56 CE. Act 20. 2-6 This o texto acute miritra longo, Trophimus 1130 Paul's last visit to Carpus' home had been on his third journey in about 56 CE 2-4. 13. Trophimus Trophomidal. Feeding. Nourishing. A co-worker of the Apostle Paul. An Ephesian Gentile Christian. Act 21. 29 Trophimus became a Christian perhaps during Paul's extended Ephesian ministry on his third missionary journey. Afterward Trophimus was one of Paul's traveling companions on the return leg of the trip through Macedonia into Asia Minor and on to Jerusalem. Act 20. 3-5, 17, 22 There Trophimus was seen with Paul, and when Paul took several others along with him into the temple grounds, the Jews thought that Trophimus, the Gentile, went beyond the court of the Gentiles, thereby defiling the temple. On this false assumption they mobbed Paul. Act 21. 26-30. 24. 6 Some years later, after Paul's first imprisonment, Trophimus traveled with him again. But when they got to Miletus, not far from Trophimus' hometown, Trophimus became sick and was unable to continue. 2-4. 20. Trumpet. A wind instrument consisting of a mouthpiece, a long metal tube, and a funnel-shaped end. In the wilderness, before Israel had broken camp for the first time, Jehovah commanded Moses to make 2 trumpets of silver. Of hammerwork. New 10. 2 Although no further description of these instruments is given, coins circulated at the time of the Maccabees and a relief on the Arch of Titus picture the trumpets as being from about 45 to 90 centimeters 1.5 to 3 feet in length, straight, ending in a bell. Josephus states that what Moses made was a kind of clarion with a narrow tube, slightly thicker than a flute, with a mouthpiece wide enough to admit the breath and a bell-shaped extremity such as trumpets have. Jewish Antiquities, 3, 291-12, 6 At the inauguration of Solomon's temple, 120 trumpets were played. 2ch 5. 12. 3 signals are described, employing 2 methods of playing. 1 Blowing both trumpets called the whole assembly of Israel to the tent of meeting. 2 Blowing 1 trumpet would summon only the chieftains who were heads over thousands. And 3 Blowing fluctuating blasts signaled the breaking up of camp. New 10. 3-7. Jehovah further directed that in times of war the trumpets should sound a war call. New 10. 9 This was done thereafter by the priest accompanying the army. New 31. 6 Abijah of Judah, when seeking to avert war with Jeroboam of Israel, pointed to these trumpets for sounding the battle alarm as a divine assurance of Judah's victory in warfare. When Jeroboam stubbornly persisted in his aggression, his forces were defeated by a Judean army that had been greatly encouraged by the priests loudly sounding the trumpets. 2ch 13. 12-15. Trumpets were included among the musical instruments in the temple. 2ch5. 11-13. The trumpeters were sons of Aaron, the priests. New 10. 8.